Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of Chaotic Neutral with me, Sabrina, and my co-host Artemis, also known as Connor. We're here with Evil Geniuses, going to be talking about pop culture, things that are relevant during this time, and basically, bring a little bit of sunshine into esports. So, Connor, if you can give a little introduction about yourself.
Yeah, well, I think they know me. I hope they know me. If not, I am one of the coaches for Evil Geniuses LCS team, living here in sunny Santa Monica, quarantined, enjoying life. But yeah, our season's starting pretty soon. I'm excited to get the ball rolling. Sab, how are you doing? How's life?
Good. I think all of us are kind of trucking through the whole quarantine situation and trying to figure out, being our best productive selves and finding ways to kind of, still make an impact in our industry while we're stuck here in our apartments making things happen.
It's not fun, is it? But we've been doing okay.
Honestly, we're making the best of it. And, part of this podcast is kind of like bringing that to other people as well. So,
yeah, definitely. I think for me, I've been just wanting ways to feel connected to people, listening to podcasts in the industries to create a way to do that. So hopefully you guys can get some sort of release or relief from this podcast. But if not, that's okay too.
Absolutely. Just let's stay connected and try to, be relevant and do our best. So following that,
so what do we got today, Stat? What are we talking about? What are we going to sink our teeth into?
There's a ton, honestly, to talk about, and we're going to do our best to kind of really touch on all those points. But first off, I really want to start with the EG rebrand. I was really excited for this because I know a lot of people had a lot of criticism for our 2.0, and kind of seeing what our org has done with the 3.0 has been really interesting, and also the fan reaction to it. How did you feel about it?
It was super cool for me. I think when we first rebranded to EG 2.0 back before spring, I liked it, but I probably liked it just because I could empathize with the values behind the org, and I could kind of see behind the scenes to the 2.0. So it wasn't just looking at a watermark and losing all this legacy. So I had a very different perspective than the average fan. So for me, I love the rebrand. I felt very strongly about it, and seeing the negative reaction from the community was hard because it was a disconnect from me, right? I was loving EG. I was super excited to be representing EG and LCS, but we had the fans really kind of crucifying us for the rebrand, which was difficult. So for me, now seeing the positive reaction on social media to this EG 3.0 is super exciting because I love EG and I love wearing the EG crest. I love representing EG on the weekends in LCS. So it feels good knowing that the fans like what we did because we did it for you guys. So that made it really rewarding for me.
Yeah, honestly, I echo that sentiment. I think what fans need to realize is that, with the 2.0, people realized, within EG that we weren't representing the fans correctly, right? As much as I think, objectively, it could have worked, it didn't because it's not what the fans wanted. And with the 3.0, it's kind of bridging that gap, right? Obviously, there is a need to modernize within esports, and I think we really hit that. But also, kind of the callback to the crest and not being such a dramatic change was really important. And I think our designers did a really good job.
Yeah, they crushed it. And they've been working on this for a year, I think over a year. I think that was probably maybe their only regret or their biggest regret of the EG 2.0. It's not communicating that we had more coming, because I think that this was always their plan to kind of refresh the old crest. It was never going to leave forever. So I was excited about this, looking forward to this. And I guess we were a little nervous before it fully came out because we were doing it sort of independent, right? This wasn't attached to the LCS or anything like that. We had definitely some media pieces coming out about it, but this was very much a standalone thing. So yeah, super big congrats to everybody in the EG team who was pushing this initiative forward. I was very I didn't have anything to do with this, but congrats to everybody who made this successful, because I'm going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of this on the weekend. So yeah, definitely very excited.
Yeah. And speaking of brands, I kind of want to talk a little bit about Valorant. As a lot of us know, there's been a lot of hype for the past couple of weeks due to the beta and, the stream keys and people just wanting to jump on the next big thing. This is, a game that is completely made to be competitive, with the eye for esports, with a lot of elements of successful esports in the past. And I think it's been really exciting to hear that on June 2nd, it'll be opening for a global release. People are really hyped about that.
Wow, that's crazy. That's in a
It's
week.
so soon. I
Jeez,
know.
that's exciting.
It, yeah. And I think a lot of teams and orgs are
Mm,
also pretty excited. We've seen Immortals and TSM, as well as Dignitas, sign teams of all different kinds of calibers, backgrounds, and I guess values
mm.
to really come into a non existent league at this time. You know, a lot of it is just, kind of this, orgs throwing tournaments,
Yeah.
Twitch throwing tournaments, nothing very substantial at this point. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's very nebulous right now, for sure. Um, I think definitely one of the most interesting things for me was the marketing initiative of the stream keys, like you said, for the closed beta. This is the first time we've really seen such an effective integration of Twitch in a beta launch, at least to this scale, between Riot Games and Twitch. And we know that the channels of their partnership are strong through LCS and all the other products. So this was something that I'm sure they've been working on for a while, and I'm sure that they're very, very pleased because if I'm a game developer and you see the success that the Valorant drop had on Twitch, and yeah, it's Riot Games and there's all kinds of extra hype around it because of that, but I think that developers are taking notes and this is going to be the new norm for how games are dropped. Definitely. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something interesting here, right? Like Twitch isn't the end all be all for gamers. Like for us, of course, we watch our competitive games there. There's our favorite streamers and personalities, but it's not the sole place that gaming lives. A lot of people like watching YouTube videos or, even more casually, people like will find things on Instagram and TikTok. And Twitch is kind of almost seen as like the more competitive route for that. And it's been interesting to kind of like figure out and understand how it was so successful. And I think the answer is that Valorant is naturally just attracting a more competitive community compared to other games. I
Yeah,
think that's why it was so
definitely.
successful.
Yeah, and also that was their scope. Like the way they
Mhm.
marketed it, the way they released it. This was a game built for esports. Like it was designed to be playable on a 10-year-old computer and achieving FPS values that you could, achieve like a high rating on because you need a certain baseline level of performance to actually become exceptional at a game like Valorant. And that is something that I think has been super successful. I know that there's been a lot of buzz in like the North American community. We have like you said, Dignitas, Immortals, and TSM. I think are the big three. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and we'll talk about those. But also, there was news coming from Riot that this game is really catching on in other markets internationally too, like Brazil. And Brazil has just probably I would be comfortable saying the most passionate esports fan base of any culture in the world. Like these fans are absolutely just insane. And also the population of Brazil is massive and the culture is very strong and sticky. So if I'm Riot Games, like this is a market that I'd be very excited of or excited about in addition to the Middle East, India, Eastern Europe, Russia. These kind of markets like are really difficult or not necessarily difficult, but can be difficult for Western developers to target all at the same time. So I think the beauty of Valorant and the success will be if this really turns into something global. And right now, the globalization feels almost natural. Like it's taking off internationally across the world, and we have to see what happens. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was a really great call out, Brazil. I think another interesting call is South Korea.
Yeah,
Out there, they don't really have the same FPS prowess like in the last 10 years compared to the West. But with things like PUBG, as well as their own versions of FPS having getting more and more popular, it's been really cool to see them really latch onto Valorant. Um,
yeah,
you know, Overwatch as well, like let's say like it's kind of, FPS shooter. It's more than anything a MOBA that's an FPS. But yeah, like Korea hasn't really latched onto things like that. Like CS:GO is not big there, and
yeah,
I think seeing Valorant kind of dominate that community is going to be really huge.
yeah, for sure. So I guess the question is, we're kind of hyping it up internationally, and we're saying that it's catching on, but like you said, there's nothing there, right? Like
Mhm.
nothing. There's no league that exists right now. Like we do have like Twitch Rivals and 100 Thieves tournaments that you can play Valorant in, but there's no real league. So are you looking at this as sort of a marketing ploy where teams signing a Valorant team, or do you see this as more them trying to secure talented players to sort of like keep them on their bench so that when like leagues do start up, like they can instantly like be competitive? Like, so how do you see these moves? And maybe there's differences too, right? Because I'm sure TSM, Immortals, Dignitas, they all had different strategies. So how did you kind of see these sticking out?
Absolutely. I think that each org, this is a kind of a cop out answer, but as you mentioned, have different strategies. I foresee like for example, a TSM trying to lock down talent as fast as they can, as well as Sentinels, right? With Sinatra as well as his
Mm.
crew, kind of just locking down a team that already had existing chemistry and giving them an offer, and trying to make sure that they join their team. But for teams like Immortals and Dignitas, I do feel like it's a little bit different just because of the nature of the players that they were picking up. For example, like with TSM, they were picking up huge names that were already established in CSGO.
Mm.
But with Immortals specifically, these are, more of tier two players that haven't really made a name for themselves, aren't like the biggest streamers out there, etc. I don't actually know what their strategy is. Maybe it's just to be on the train, just to be on the train.
That's hard to
Um,
say. It's hard to say.
yeah.
I do think that, like, I like the tier two idea for sure. If it were me, if I was a GM, I would be really scared to sign somebody like Sinatra on a Valorant contract for, I'm making up numbers, but what is it, 500K? Who knows? Maybe it's
Mhm.
less, but he is a player that, like, from his branding side alone, like, he's going to fetch a substantial contract. And if you're going to sign him as like a Valorant influencer-esque person for that amount on your payroll, like, he better be adding some serious value to your company. And if he's only adding value as like a marketing influencer and there's not actually like any, I guess, like, hooks with the Valorant outside of the social aspect of it, there's no competitive sphere, I think you could be in trouble. Especially if you're waiting for this league to happen from Riot and maybe it's taking too long. Like, if you're holding payroll for these teams for 1 year and then it's coming on year 2 and there's still no league and you're still paying salaries of these guys, you're going to start getting questions from people above you. So I think the way Immortals did it is really intelligent. Like you said, they signed some tier 2 guys who maybe, like, nobody really has heard of them before, but these are talented FPS players who have a Counter-Strike background. So if these guys really are dedicated tier 2 players who are young and hungry and have been showing steady improvement in Counter-Strike, then I think that's a pretty heady bet by Immortals. I do not agree with signing big name talent just for name recognition and throwing them as a Valorant team and having them play in Twitch rivals. Like, I think if you were already have that as your strategy, that you just wanted to build a marketing deck of influencers and streamers, then fine. Like, we see teams do that and that's great. But I think that you have to have that as a very, very focused strategy, and you can't sort of just stumble your way into Valorant, sign a team, and hope that a league is created out of nowhere, because I don't think it's going to happen.
Exactly. I mean, when people are signing these teams, they're expecting at least a 2-year investment until they see anything come back, right? Outside of like streaming contracts, which are a little bit different. But signing 5 players,
5 players, yeah.
that is a huge gamble to make. I mean, we do feel pretty confident with Valorant, especially with like the numbers that have come back. But at the same time, like as you mentioned, signing people for large contracts this early is a big question mark.
They might not
For
even
sure.
be good. Like, I'm sure he's like Sinatra, he's going to be talented or whatever, but
Mhm.
like, he might not even be close to the best. He could just be like an average run-of-the-mill player. So it's definitely early days when it comes to signing talents, especially since the game isn't even released globally yet. So
Mhm.
I don't think you could possibly make the claim that you've signed the best players, because how could you possibly know who the best players are? So with that, like, I think you have to assign risks to this, and you need to take the Immortals route. I don't think going for like someone like Ska or something makes much sense. But yeah, respect to Immortals, and I'm curious to see if other teams start kind of picking things up as we get closer to launch.
Yeah, and something I also wanted to touch on, since you are a Dig alum, is the Dignitas female team.
Yeah. So I think that, like, there's 2 ways to look at it. I think that the cynic in the community is going to be like, women Valorant, like women CSGO, and they're going to like say something terrible. But I know Heather, who's I don't know her official title, but she's very high up in Dignitas. She's marketing director or something. She's one of their executives, and she's an ex-professional CSGO player. And she's super, super passionate about CSGO. She's super passionate about shooters, and she's really passionate about equality and women in esports. And for her, like, this is definitely something that she's passionate about, and as an org, I think that they're passionate about this. So it was definitely on brand for them. It definitely fit their values, and I was really excited to see them giving opportunities for women in esports. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been on a lot of panels with a couple of the Dig female CSGO team
Yeah,
in the past couple of years, so I know them quite well,
cool.
and I've always respected their grind. And I think it's very interesting because, let's like talk about female CSGO for a second. It is the only esports with a like separate gender league that
Yes,
exists, a
yes.
community. Because in other esports, it's kind of seen as, a negative attribute. You're like separating by
Hmm.
gender because you like the underlying context might be like, oh, women can't compete
Yeah,
in the
sure.
men's league, so they have to have their own.
Sure.
And there's been that kind of argument. And
Uh-huh.
in other games, you've seen women play, like in League of Legends and Overwatch, competitively with male counterparts. But with CSGO, I kind of asked this to Emily in the past, like, why do you think that's like better? And she said, in the end, it's like we're still proving ourselves. And I think it's just as competitive. It's not something that is a negative attribute. It's something that allows us to kind of shine and showcase that there are women here and there's a space for women in esports. And I thought that was like a really strong
Yeah.
argument.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's key, and there's examples in other things as well. Like if you look at a sport or a game like chess. Chess in the history of chess was a predominantly male-dominated game. It was difficult for women to get entry, just like through culture or whatever. But like women have their own chess league, very similar to men, or very similar to CS:GO, right? Where they can even get their own titles. So I could be, or you could be, a women's grandmaster. You could also just get a grandmaster title, which is there's no gender or sex involved. But there's separate titles and separate tournaments just for women. And in the chess world, it's not because like there's something innate with women that makes them worse at chess, right? Like that's ridiculous. But what it is about is it's about lowering barriers to entry in a sport or a game that has structural aspects of it that are keeping women out, right? Like for whatever reason, we saw women being underrepresented in chess, and creating a league that was inclusive and safe and a space for them to improve themselves and compete showed growth in the women community in chess. And now there's, some of the strongest chess players in the world are women. We have some of really, really talented grandmasters from China and from America who are competing with men. They're not winning world championships yet, but they're getting very close. And it was amazing for women in chess. And I think that you are ignorant if you look at a women's only league in a sport or a game where women are underrepresented and you say, like this is sexist, like you're not like putting them on a level playing field with men. It's not about that at all. It's about removing the barriers to entry. So I do respect women's only leagues in esports, and I think that there are places for them, even in games like you said in League of Legends or in Counter-Strike, where there is precedent for women playing professionally with men. That doesn't mean that there can't be women only leagues, right? Like what about the 12 or 13-year-old girl in high school who maybe is thinking about being an esports player when she grows up? Like let's give her a place where she feels like she can compete, right? So these are things that I'm pretty passionate about, and it's great to see the community kind of like kicking up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important for like Dignitas to like make that announcement, say, hey, we're going to have the first female Valorant team.
Good for them.
To exist. And, that's kind of setting the precedent and like, hey, other orgs, like let's jump in and like let's give those opportunities to women in the esports community as well. So that was really exciting to see. And I am very excited to see what comes in the next couple of weeks when Valorant launches globally.
Same. Exciting.
Yeah. Following that, another Riot title is obviously our home, the LCS, as well as the League of Legends community. Yes. And there was just a huge announcement that there's a mid-season streamathon. Oh. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. So I think that there's two parts to this, okay? So there's the mid-season streamathon where there's like influencers and streamers and pro players, and they're going to be doing some show matches and stuff for you guys. But there's also the mid-season cup. Okay, and this is what I'm most excited about. But it's the top 4 LPL, top 4 LPL and top 4 LCK teams. So we have JD Gaming, Top Esports, FPX, and IG from the LPL. And then we have T1, Genji, DragonX, and Damwon from the LCK. So some serious heavy hitters here playing International League of Legends. When's the last time we saw International League of Legends? It's been since Worlds, I think. So I'm super excited to see these guys play. They're also playing on the same patch that we'll be playing on for week 1 of LCS. I believe they're on 10-10. So that's going to be good for all the coaches around the league, like myself. I think for us, we've only really had solo queue and EU Masters to kind of like wet our whistle in the off season. I don't know about you guys, but I've been dying for some competitive league content. So I'm super excited for this mid-season cup. Yeah, definitely. What about you?
Yeah, honestly, for me as a manager, I'm just really excited to see Jizuke play at the streamathon. He will be playing in the show match.
Are we leaking? Or was this a live leak? Okay.
Oh, is that a leak? I actually have my no leaks like little sticker right here. I don't know if that's leaked.
Keep going.
Keep going. Not happening. But I'm very excited to see the players, kind of compete and be involved. I know that, during the coronavirus and quarantine, this off season has been a little boring. There's not enough league content. I know, like I've seen so many tweets from large community members, casters, players, coaches, you name it. Just like we need more League of Legends in our life, and I'm really excited for that to
Seriously.
come back.
Yeah, thank God. I've been missing LCS. I've been missing League of Legends. So I think it's what we all need, honestly. Like this quarantine, I know, like I think we're gonna get into it, but it's been challenging. And I think one of the most, like, at least for me, one of the most grounding things in my life is my work. It's my job. I love my job. So being able to return to work at least like full time in a scrim environment, because of course I've been doing a ton of work in the off season, but it's different than being with your players for 10, 12 hours, 8 hours a day. It depends on the day in meetings or scrims. So I'm excited to be with them again, maybe not in person, but at least remotely, and get return to practice.
For sure. And another league that's been talked about is the LCK that we just mentioned. They just announced that in 2021 they'll be going to a franchise league just like the LCS and LEC. And there was a couple of interesting bids. I don't know if you've heard about this, Connor, but basically FaZe and Energy have placed bids into the LCK franchise. What do you think about NA orgs trying to hit that market?
I saw that, and it's super interesting to me. I love it. Just love unpacking and thinking about it. But I think that, like, on the surface, you might say like, okay, they have no chance. Like, you could say like Korea is like sometimes like very like closed, and like you could see like maybe difficulties with like a Western brand like getting traction in kind of like a sticky culture like South Korea. But on the other hand, a lot of these South Korean teams already have Western ownership groups, like T1, for example. T1 is, I think, primarily, I think they're majority Western owned. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they at least have a substantial stake that's Western owned. So the LCK League officials definitely have experience working with Western orgs. They've shown at least like some kind of preference, maybe however slight, at least allowing kind of T1 structuring it as this. So it's exciting. Like, I think that if you're a North American org, like let's use like FaZe, for example. Like FaZe Clan, like the best thing about FaZe Clan is like they are esports Western culture. Like Los Angeles meets esports meets like Supreme meets, you know what it is, like they're very much like this cultural phenomenon in the West. And like South Korea, like they like Supreme, they like fashion, like brands, and like maybe I don't really think they like FaZe. I could be wrong. But if I'm FaZe and I'm like, I know that their execs are coming from the music industry, from fashion, they're thinking about bringing their culture to other markets, and I think that's phenomenal. And like streetwear, fashion, gaming, in this kind of intersection, I think is super, super marketable in a culture like South Korea. They just have to really do a good job, of course, with whatever kind of like refresh that they would do, because of course they have to spin it to the local market. They wouldn't just put the same product in North America as they're putting in South Korea. Of course there'd be a spin to it, but I actually trust that FaZe would do a good job. I think that the people they have in charge understand culture very well, and surprisingly, because I think you look at FaZe and like you kind of think that they're just like, I don't know, like partiers and like not very like serious, I guess. But I think on the business side, there are some very smart people working at FaZe who do understand how to bring culture and how to spread culture. So I'm excited for their application. I wish I knew more because I don't have any insider knowledge. But yeah, it's definitely exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to agree with you. I think like a FaZe lifestyle brand coming into the LCK would really shake things up.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like particularly healthy. I think someone would have to tell me like what that intersectionality really looks like. I don't have insight on that, but it is very interesting to see these Western brands like going for the LCK. I guess my question is, do you think they're going to the LCK because they think the Korean League of Legends market is like really valuable for their brand, or are they just doing it to like because they can't get into the LCS or the LEC?
Mostly the former, I think. Like the LCS is closed, the LEC is closed, but league expansion probably not off the table. I can certainly see it happening in a couple years. So I don't think that you're necessarily locked out of the North American market or the European market. These things could very well already be happening behind the scenes. No idea. But we've seen the NFL or NHL expand, and it's very common in growing leagues. So we could definitely see a Western expansion for sure. But at the same time, I think that one, like this is an immediate opportunity. Like you said, this is happening right now. They don't have to wait for NA or EU to open up. But also the opportunity to spread your product like across cultural barriers is something that the best companies in the world right now are trying and learning how to do. Like if you look at a company like Netflix, a large part of their growth over the past 2 years has been through titles that they've released in other languages, not in English. So they released titles in Spanish to try and get the South American market. They released titles in Korean and China. No, not Chinese, but in I'm trying to think. I think maybe it was Thailand. I forget the countries that they were
Mhm.
attacking in East Asia. But Netflix has been aggressively globalizing, and they're doing it by like tapping into the local culture. So I wouldn't want FaZe to try and bring FaZe to Korea, like exactly the product they have. Like they would somehow need a way to create something that was authentic to the South Korean esports fans. I don't think that they would have any success trying to bring their product and forcing it onto the South Korean esports fan base. But I think if they're smart and they took their time and they were careful, I do think it's possible. So whether it's going to happen, I guess it depends on the strength of their application. But yeah, we'll see. It's exciting.
We'll see. Yeah, honestly, I will, I don't know. It's just if FaZe or Energy like go to the LCK, I think there will be quite an uproar. And I think it would be really great for both the league and also for those brands, like just, in terms of like people talking. And I'm really excited to see what happens. But
Same. I just gotta say it one more time. FaZe is my front runner. Like I think NRG, like they're very much like they're probably just trying to get in league to get into league, but like FaZe is about culture, and they're about like spreading that culture to other places, and they're about like creating content around these cultural phenomena. And I think that these things make them different and unique compared to other sports works. I don't think that they are matched in these areas. And for these reasons, if I'm the LCK, I would be excited about FaZe. I don't know about NRG or any of these Western guys, but I think FaZe definitely is interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think one thing that FaZe has really been winning in actually is like during this quarantine period, they've still been making content. They've still been being relevant within this time. And not a lot of esports brands are really been taking that, to stride. And I kind of wanted to touch a little bit about that. Like, what are some orgs that have been winning during the quarantine, and what are some orgs that haven't been taking that potential yet?
Good question. Man, I'm trying. Who's been winning during quarantine?
I think for me, it's 100 Thieves first off.
Okay, that's a good point. So one, they've had content houses, right? And I think that is an insane advantage where they can like have quarantine, but they can still film because they have people together in a space. So they don't even have to like breach ethical concerns or anything like that with getting people exposure or anything like that. They can just film. Yeah, and the tournaments too. Yeah, they're doing a great job. Yeah, definitely. Who else though? It's hard on orgs. Biggest losers, I think, like all of us. I don't know. It's quite hard for sure. But 100 Thieves, they're definitely Do you have any others? Because I'm drawing blank.
Yeah, well, for me, for like losers, this isn't like even orgs. Like, let's expand to like leagues and brands, right?
Okay, nice, yeah.
I would say like the biggest struggle has probably been the CDL and Overwatch League, and it's not really on them. It was literally the worst time for them to go like globalization, city-based events,
regionalized. Yeah.
I don't know if you have like any thoughts on that, but it's rough.
Yeah, like. The regionalization of esports was a really aggressive strategy in its inception. I'm not even sure if we were there yet. We saw it in China in the LPL. They had a really, really great success with their regionalization, but they're a very homogeneous culture that esports is mainstream inside. So that's kind of like a no-brainer. Whereas the United States, we are not a homogeneous culture, and esports is not mainstream. And you're gonna put it in cities across the country. We have poor like international transportation infrastructure. These guys are going to be flying. There's so many different externalities associated with a move like this that I didn't necessarily think that the benefits were going to outweigh the risks, at least right now in 2020. So yeah, like I said, even without this pandemic at all, I would consider this a risky strategy for an esports league. It's almost like a kind of like a go big or go home thing, at least in the US market. I think in China, totally different animal, but in the US market, I'm really not sold. So I think that this was, I'm not going to say that like the pandemic is what killed the Overwatch League, right? Because like I think that they were probably trending down anyway, and I don't think that these strategies would have helped them without the pandemic, but it certainly was like the nail in the coffin for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there was a lot of factors that were, just not in their favor, right? Like, converting to YouTube exclusivity without being ready. Like, a lot of the viewers of the Overwatch League really appreciated the Twitch integration into the stream with like drops and prizes and bits and all these things that you could really show like your team, your favorite team, and like support them. But they didn't have that like ready for the league this year, and that contributed viewership. I think the biggest thing again was like them trying to do localization, and then this pandemic hit, and outside of everything that was like contributing to low viewership, that just ruined the experience for the players themselves. Like
Yeah.
they weren't excited to travel anyways, but now like they have ping differences when there is like roster changes. I know like visas have been a huge issue right now, and all this other stuff. Like unfortunately, the Overwatch League and kind of the CDL have been taking L's.
Taking L's. That's okay. I think they've been taking L's for a while. I'm not gonna lie. So they kind of stay taking L's. Actually, the CDL was interesting though because this was kind of like their breakout year, right? They had like this franchise pitch, like they were getting all new investment. We had like NRG hype, so they weren't like trending down the way Overwatch was. Like I don't think they really were going to take off necessarily. I didn't agree with their model. I didn't agree with buying a Call of Duty franchise. I thought it was ridiculous. I could think of 1,000 better ways to use that 50 million or however much it was.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a bit sad. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think for like W's, honestly, I do think EG is up there. And I will say why. Like, during this time, like a lot of orgs haven't been making news. They haven't been making like big changes or things like that. And us with our rebrand, as well as kind of being able to continue with the right games, like all of the games that we've been in are still relevant, like during this quarantine, as much as like I'm sad the international isn't happening this year. At least like our guys are still streaming, they're still grinding, they're still making headlines. And obviously, like it's very lucky to be in the LCS right now because we are one of the few esports that's even on ESPN. Like
crazy,
we got
right?
on ESPN because of the pandemic. Like that's insane.
Oh, we're super blessed. Like I think EG has super intelligent people at the top, and they were definitely prepared for something like this. Menace shows, like you said, I think we've been doing well, and we haven't been affected too much. Of course, everybody's affected. We're not alone, but I am definitely proud with people at the top how they handled the situation. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I have to like give a really big shout out to like how League of Legends Esports has been really handling it. Like they found solutions so quickly compared to I think a lot of other leagues that were kind of in limbo.
Yeah, it was so stressful. I remember when when this was happening and like things were getting canceled. Like first we lost soccer, we lost like the NBA. Like we were like losing everything, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, like is esports next? Like are we gonna be okay?" And it was a stressful time for me. Like and for the players too, for everybody. Like they put so much of themselves into what they do that the kind of just contemplating losing that is just tragic. So thankful for Riot Games and thankful for you guys too, the fans. Just being supportive of us during these times. It's really, without you guys, we couldn't do what we do. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Honestly, the fans coming up in troves, not just to like, the LCS, but like streams as well. Like we've seen like stream numbers grow. I think it was like 98% reported within the past 3 months, like in growth. And that's not just Twitch, that's like YouTube, Facebook, Mixer, everything has just been growing. So really appreciate all the support like during this time. Hopefully we're bringing good content like this to your computers. And, I've been really excited to kind of start this project with Connor.
Same. Yeah, it's been super fun. Like I said, off season with quarantine is just challenging. Like you don't get to see your players who I love. Like you don't get to see your other coaches. You don't get to see anybody from your org. You're just stuck. And when we go back to work, we're also going to be remote. It looks like. I don't think, unless something changes between when you guys are seeing this and when we record, we're going to be working remotely again, at least for the start of summer split. So that's going to be hard. Like I said, like a big part of the job and coaching is the relationships you have with your players. And when you're not with them in person, you're missing so much of the interaction. You're probably missing, 60% of the interaction that comes from just nonverbals and face-to-face. Like also when you're just in a Discord call together and then you go to a scrim, like there's never an opportunity to really grab somebody for like a one-on-one. Like you can, but it's very formal. Like you got to pull them to their channel, and there's like all kinds of different barriers to the very like kind of quick mechanisms that you use for feedback and coaching. So it's definitely challenging working remotely. And a big part of what I've been doing this off season is I've been learning from leaders and educators in business and around the world and in markets who are running into similar challenges transitioning to remote. So it's been a long time since I've coached remotely too. Like Before I moved to LCS and Academy, I was working in collegiate while I was coaching remotely in Europe, so I could get that kind of in-person experience that I think is so necessary for esports. And now we're moving online again, and it's been years since I've coached online. So there's definitely challenges associated with that everybody has to work out, but still LCS is back, so I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I've also been working on a lot of programming on the back end of EG for this whole like remote situation and try to educate people that kind of were like us, you know, young leaders in esports and making sure they have those opportunities as internships get canceled with other organizations. So totally know how you feel, Connor. It is a struggle, but I am really glad to get the time today to talk to you about
this is fun. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it too. I'm looking forward to the next one. I think that as this goes on, we're not going to be afraid about hot topics. I'm not afraid to speak my mind. I think that there needs to be more, measured, articulated takes when it comes to certain issues in esports. So definitely expect to see those on this show, in addition to pop culture news and maybe even some feel-good stories if we have them. But yeah, super fun, Sab. Thanks. This is great.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for listening. This concludes our first episode of Chaotic Neutral. Really appreciate you guys listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.